effect. Perfect. So recording will go out tomorrow. You might get two, actually. I'm not too sure. I created a Zoom event as one big event with 2 times for each event. That way, if you guys miss the afternoon, the 2 o'clock session, you still have the opportunity to hit the later session. So you might get 2 emails. I'm not too sure how that's going to work, to be quite honest with you. So today we are talking all about filters and how your filters are essentially going to help you navigate through your database and also help prevent leads from slipping through the cracks. So when doing lead generation or using any kind of database where you're managing that database, it's truly very, very important for you guys to be logging everything. The benefit of logging is that, for one, you don't have to remember. As long as you log it, the system will tell you what to do, rather than you trying to remember when you called or if you called them and when you're going to call them again and things like that. So we're bound to have leads slip through the cracks, for sure, if we're relying strictly on our memory, because we give it way too much credit than what it's actually capable of. So the first thing that I would always suggest in any account, and are you using your dialer at all? It doesn't look like you are, which is okay, because we can still do it. So this is a good example. If you're not using a dialer, we still want to be logging our calls. Okay, so again, going back and saying, yes, I did call that person and this is when I called it, so I know when to call it again. So if we just open up this first lead here and look at some information, if you're using the dialer, essentially you would hit dial lead. This here would then pop up your dialer. It would explain and give you the lead's contact information. Right here where it's blurred will display your Twilio number as well. So the benefit of using the dialer, for one, is that it's going to speed up your process significantly when you are having to reach out to several leads. Right? Let's face it, we're not just calling one person a day. We often have several calls to make, and this definitely speeds up the process. So this, by using this, can take you at most 30 seconds, at the very most. And then if you're using your cell phone, you're looking at about 1.5 to 2.5 minutes per person when you're doing everything manually, because you have to go and pull up the number on your phone, call it, come back into your system, go in, log the call, and so on. So this, when using your dialer, it's automatically going to log your calls for you. So whether you're making that call or you're receiving that call. So if you are actually talking to somebody or you're changing, this is always going to default on no message left. So just by changing this, we'll move the lead along into different filters that we're going to create and review. So it'll move them from, if you're on no message left, you at least tried to contact them. And if you log your call that you talked to the lead or they called you on your Twilio number, it's automatically going to move to made contact in that pipeline. So that pipeline right down here. So then they'll move into the appropriate filter nonetheless when that happens. Now, if you aren't using the dialer, so similar to this case here, you can still log your calls in the notes and call section. So you will have the ability here to change the timestamp. So if you know you called this person and maybe you called them last month sometime, you can still change the time and date if the time is necessary. Put it in there. If not, just make sure it's on the right date. And then you still have the same call results, and those call results will still be connected to this pipeline. So that's just something I wanted to point out, and the benefit of logging that information. It's all going to come together when we are looking at filters here. So for many of you, you may remember this applied save filter in the training session if you guys had a training. If you guys are on lead generation, you should have had training, especially if you've had leads training within the last 2 years or signed up within the last couple of years, you definitely had training. So the applied save filters are essentially your save filters. So you have 3 currently in here. So for many of you that are in here, when you're coming into training, we do create these filters. You at the very least have 1 and 2, and sometimes we create the 3rd one with you on the training session, so you're watching what we're doing in order to save those filters. Now, in order to create filters, you're using these filter items here, and you essentially can stack filters. So if you have leads in your system, I 100% encourage you to play around with filters to see what they're doing, because you guys can create very specific audiences for yourself that is going to help you manage that database or target specific audiences with respect to different things. So for example, if you have people that are investors, you could easily filter them out if you're tagging them and so on. So you can send them off, investment opportunities if you happen to land a listing that would be amazing as such an investment opportunity. So anytime you're creating a filter in here, you can stack them all, and then you can save those filters. Okay, so you can give it a name, whatever you want to call it, and then you can either save it as a personal filter or a company filter. And we're going to create these filters again so that you can see in just a moment. So with these two options, so if you are a sub user, meaning you are perhaps part of a team and you're a sub user, you have a team leader, you would likely only have the option to create a personal filter, because you have to either be the account holder or have admin rights to be able to create anything company-wide for your team. So the personal filter means just that. It's personal to you. No other user account can access your personal filters. If you create a filter as a company filter, then everyone in the organization can get, is allowed to benefit from it. So in the applied safe filter section, you see that we create them as company filters. That way, if you do grow and or you do have a team, all of your team is always going to have access to those filters. So let's check out these filters. So this is essentially where you want to start your day. And this is your number one new lead, 0 calls logged. Okay. Now, if you're recreating this, if it's not in your system, you can call it whatever you want to call it. Just remember that we're focusing on the people we have not even attempted to call yet. So what this filter is we're using the number of calls is equal to 0. So this here is essentially indicating that we have not called and or logged a call on any of these people yet. The phone validity of these leads is either on unknown or valid, meaning that we're not including leads in this list that we know or I've identified their number as being invalid, because it is essentially a call list. And then the pipeline for these leads is pointing that we have not made contact with them at all. So their pipeline is currently sitting on either not set, new lead, or tried to contact. So currently in this list, we have 85 leads in here. So I'm not saying that, these 85 leads have not been, attempted contact by Murtaza here. And I hope I'm saying your name correctly. It's that the calls were possibly just not logged. Okay. So when we go through these lists, we essentially want this list, this filter on its own to be at 0. We don't want any of the leads that are coming into our dashboard to have no attempt at communication if we have the opportunity to reach out to them, essentially. So as soon as you log a call on Livia, whether you talk to the lead, you get a wrong number, you get anything, it essentially, they're going to fall off this list as soon as you log a call, because they're no longer going to match this one qualifier of 0 calls logged. So Murtaza is raising a hand. Let me just allow you to talk. So if you want to talk, Murtaza, you can definitely unmute yourself if you have that ability to.
Thank you. So my question is, I try to call using, the system, but the call doesn't go through for some reason.
What happens?
I don't know. It just doesn't go through.
Does it just not go through? Or are you getting the weird Twilio message?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that means that you likely still need to upgrade your Twilio account. Okay. Or there's no funds in your Twilio account, one or the other. So it might have run out of funds. So I can get you your Twilio logins after this if you don't know them offhand. And then you just basically go into Twilio, and on the left-hand side, it's going to say upgrade project, and then Twilio just needs your billing information, and then once you enter it, it'll work. That's all it'll take. Yeah, and then you'll be good to go. Perfect.
But it should. I mean, I started out with some funds, right? So
so it always gives you trial funds with Twilio. So this is great for anyone that is kind of on here if you're new.
Okay.
So Twilio does give you a trial fund. Those funds aren't technically for you to use to call people. Twilio, the back end of Twilio, and if any of you guys have ventured in there, is very confusing. It is not meant for the average consumer to understand. It's meant for developers ultimately. So it can definitely be overwhelming when you jump in there. So the money in there is essentially for developers if they're testing out Twilio because they're incorporating into a program such as this, where they need test funds to be able to get the triggers to go so that they can test it out and try it out before they throw money and fully activate, if that makes any sense to you guys.
Okay.
So Sherry is asking if Twilio charges you if you use your own cell phone. So Twilio will only charge you if you're using Twilio. So if somebody calls your Twilio number, it gets forwarded to your cell phone. Yes, there would still be a Twilio charge because they technically called your Twilio number. If you're calling from your cell phone and logging that call manually, you're not using the system, then no, Twilio has no part in that. You did everything from your cell phone itself. So anything that kind of passes through Twilio, yes, there's a charge. Anything that's done completely outside Twilio, no charge at all. So to build this filter, and I'll just kind of clear it out so that you guys can see, we're just adding these filter items. So our first one is number of calls. We're changing this to equals, and then we're just putting a 0 here. We're then going to phone validity in here, and then we want only people that we know the number is valid or we just don't know yet if it's valid or not. And then we're going to add another filter for the pipeline. So the pipeline is not set, new lead, or tried to contact. Okay, so when we have all this in here, we apply that filter, it'll show you the list of results there. You give it a name and you save it. Okay, so either as one or the other, or you can do both if you want to, but there's no real point. It's not going to hurt you. There's no real point to it though, to have it in both. So the ultimate goal when we're in this filter is to have this at 0. Now, in a situation, if your guys' system looks like similar to this, where you've got several people in here, more than 30 people in here, you don't want to call all of these people at once. The maximum you would want to do is 30 a day and get this down. So anywhere between 20 to 30 calls a day in this list to get it down to 0. And the reason why you want to do that is your next filter is going to be compounding this filter. It's going to have you calling them every couple of days. So if we call everyone today and none of these people answer, you better hope in 2 days from now you have the same amount of time to be able to do your follow-ups on the people that didn't answer. And that's not always the case, right? So if you guys are playing catch up in here, it'll take you a good couple of weeks to get caught up. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. But once you do, it's a really great feeling. So the fastest way with these leads to get through them is opening up your first lead, and you'll tend to have a lead navigation here at the top. Okay, so if you don't see this lead navigation, there's usually a button that says load lead navigation. This is going to allow you to hop from lead and then to the next lead. Okay, so if you're using the dialer, when we're calling leads, we don't encourage that, or suggest, I should say, that you leave a voicemail right out of the gate. A lot of your leads are in that research phase of just starting to think or consider a move, and they're not going to feel it's necessary to talk to you. So some of you, even 3 months out from moving, won't necessarily think it's, it's reasonable to talk to anyone just yet. They're not ready to go look at houses, or they don't have any questions. So when you identify who you are through leaving a message, sometimes it's harder for you to actually get them to answer the call after that, because now you've identified who's calling, but you still want to have a conversation with them because you want to figure out where they're at in the process. So the first call, we suggest you can let it hit voicemail, and that would just be simply to make sure that the name on the voicemail matches the name of your lead. If it doesn't match the name of the lead, don't scratch it as being a bad number just yet. Don't jump to conclusions. It could be that it's somebody that lives in the same household. It could be a spouse's phone, so on and so forth. So what I typically do is with the last name, I would kind of put in brackets and just put like voicemail, like VM says Bob, right? That way, if a man answers, they're gonna be like, hey, Bob. And it kind of, pulls together. Or you can say, hey, is April there? And if, I think you got the wrong number, it's like, oh, is this Bob? Right? So at least you kind of have their name at hand should that happen to you. So that's what's suggested for the first call, and then going through and calling, 20 to 30 of these a day to get it down to 0. Now, for some of you, you may have a list of hundreds of people sitting in here. It's not uncommon, to be quite honest with you, because not everyone utilizes their filter. So what you can do then to narrow this down for yourself so it's not so alarming and overwhelming for yourself is to filter it down based on when somebody was last active. So then you can just even go last activity. And we want to pull up leads that are all the leads that are active within a certain number of days. And typically your kind of safe bet is the 30 days. And then you can just click apply. And then now there's down to 45 of those 85 leads that were actually active in the last 30 days, right? So, and then you can save it. If you want to override this filter and save it with this being part of the new filter, you would click update. If we're just wanting to do this temporarily, we just do apply. Okay? Apply is just temporary. Update in our system is always equivalent to save. So once you get through, let's say in this case, these 45, you could always adjust this, change it to 60, and then hit apply, and then you'd likely have more leads to conquer. So you can kind of take it in bite-sized pieces for yourself, so it's not so overwhelming at the end of the day. Now, one thing that you can do as well is save this filter to be your main filter when you log into your system. Okay, so in order to do that, you would just click this button right here. So this will set it as the default filter. So every time you log into the system, you're looking at the list of leads that you have not tried to call yet. And so that you can do that with any filter. So if there's a specific filter that you want, every time you log into your system, you just set it as the default filter, and that's exactly what will happen. So that's your first filter. So calling, maximum 30 a day. So kind of hitting anywhere, 20 to 30. If you can only do 15, 15's fine. If you can only do 10, 10's fine. Something is better than nothing, but work your way to getting it down to nothing. Then you're going to move into your next filter. So this is your number 2, new lead needs to make contact. And I'm just going to do a quick update on your filter here. I'm going to sort them by last activity. And so now I want to save this, so I'm going to click update. So what I did there is I just updated this one filter here to reflect a little bit differently. It's a little easier for you guys to manage when you are looking at your leads, and I'll discuss in a second. And then I flipped this list to last activity. And the reason I did that is essentially because as you guys are doing this longer and longer and longer, and depending on how much money you guys are throwing at your leads, this list could, for some of you, be a lot more than just 3 people. Okay, so by doing that, it's then going to flip the list, regardless of when somebody registered, to show you the most recently active lead at the top. So if you can't conquer through this whole list, then at least you're conquering through the ones that are most recently active first, before you're moving on to the ones that are least actively, least active, essentially. So what this filter is again, all you would need to do is really on your number 1 is switch the number of calls to equal to or greater than, and then 1. So this is pulling up all the leads where we have at least 1 call logged on them. We have the same rules with respect to the phone validity and the pipeline. So we have not made contact with these people, and we potentially have a good number. And the additional component we're adding here is the was not contacted. So this one was not contacted by phone, and it would be, when you're adding that, all leads in the last number of days, and you would just go 2. Okay. So again, this is going to pull up your leads every 2 days for you if you call them and they don't answer. Okay. So the key to this is going to be consistency in your calls. The more consistent we are, and if we keep calling and not leaving a voice message, the person on the other end is going to get quite curious. They can identify the number. They can identify that someone's trying to get a hold of them, but they don't know who. And inevitably, most of your leads will answer by the 6th to 8th call attempt out of sheer curiosity. They've just got to figure out who it was. So Sherry is asking, what was not contacted by phone to mean? So that is indicating that we have not contacted or logged a call on this lead in the last 2 days. So that's where this one here was not contacted by phone, and it's all leads within the last number of days. And then we have that as 2. So essentially what happens here, if I call Karma today, and again, Karma doesn't answer, Karma is going to fall off of this list and automatically reappear in 2 days from now for me to call again. And then when I call in 2 days, if she doesn't answer again, she's going to fall off the list and reappear again in the next 2 days after that. So it's, as long as you're logging, the system is going to keep producing who you have to contact. Does everyone understand that? I know it's a little hard when we're all just kind of watching and not talking. It's basically just going to cycle through. So that's, again, the importance of logging everything, knowing when you did it, that sort of thing. Now, if you're spotting a number, like I could take a wild guess just based on the size of the blur, that this isn't even a complete phone number. So if you guys are noticing that in your leads, it's a fake number or it's obvious, it's not a valid number, right away, just mark it as invalid. Okay. The reason you want to do this is so that that lead, who in this case is active, the next time they go to look at a listing you've sent them, it's going to require that they give you a valid phone number in order for them to continue to look at the listing. And they can try to pull a fast one and give you another fake phone number, but the system is actually going to send them a 4-digit PIN to the new number they provided. And if they don't have a PIN to put into the website, it's not going to unlock for them. So you end up turning some bad numbers into good numbers, because not everyone does it intentionally, if that makes sense. So with these leads here in this filter, the number 2 filter, what we do is what we call is the 23-second rule. So when you go to dial the lead, you would only let it ring for 23 to 25 seconds. What that is on the receiving end is essentially 4 to 5 rings. Okay, you may not hear 4 to 5 rings on your end, but we've all done it where we've called somebody and all of a sudden they answer. You're like, oh, it didn't even ring. We're like, well, it rang on my end, right? So same idea here. You might not hear it ring, but it's definitely ringing on the other end. So anyone that really has a true intention of answering their call rather than silencing it will typically answer their call within 4 to 5 rings. So it'll also allow you to scurry through your call list, right? So if we call Karma here, we let it ring for 23 to 25 seconds. Karma doesn't answer. We're simply just going to hang up, save the call, and click on to the next lead. Then we do the same with Mariella. We dial Mariella, let it ring 23 to 25 seconds. She doesn't answer. We're going to hang up, save the call, move on to the next lead. So when you're using the dialer, essentially, you can accomplish 3 calls within a minute and a half if none of them answered, allowing you to accomplish more calls in any given time, which in result is having more conversations while you're doing this. Does anyone have any questions about this number 2 filter? We're all good, we're all good. Perfect. So the next filter that
I have a question.
Sure.
So in terms of the numbers, right? Like you saw some of those numbers that we get, they are not real numbers, right? So instead of waiting for the next time, why don't we sort of make sure that the first time they provide the proper number?
Well, that's what you would do when you're looking when the lead comes in. So the reason why, so part of the reason why we don't have so many rules when it comes to somebody signing up on your website is if you make things too complicated, for one, they just leave, right? We have a tool that could potentially get a valid number from that lead as well. Now, regardless if somebody signs up on your website, you've already paid for the click. You've already paid for them to get to the website in the first place. Now, a lot of the time, most of your leads are going to give you some form, if not both forms of proper communication, right? So you're paying for the click anyway. So even if part of the information isn't correct, you've at least got something to work with rather than nothing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. The other problem I have besides calling is none of my SMSs are going through.
That's
Like
because
that's
your
just
Twilio. That's your Twilio. So once you upgrade your Twilio, they'll
okay.
all start going out. Yeah. Yeah. Because they're trying to go out, but they're failing because it's not set up completely yet.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
And I just have your screen on my other screen. I'm just going through and marking some numbers as invalid for you. So Sherry is asking, do you put non-answered phones as no message left? Yes, that's exactly what you do, is no message left. You called, you didn't leave a message. That's it. That's basically what it is, because you have a couple different options when you're logging your calls. That's not what I wanted. Go away. So you will have the called, no message left, obviously meaning we didn't leave a message, they weren't there. You could leave a message that they were not there. So maybe you called, maybe it was a landline or something, or their siblings or roommate's phone number, who knows. The lead was not there. Somebody answered, but the lead was not there. You then have if you choose to leave a voicemail, you have that option. That's also indicating that you didn't actually talk to the person. You then have the talk to a lead. So if you talk to the lead, that's obviously you had a conversation with them, or the lead called in, they called you. And if you log a call, so sometimes we call people and it's a good number, it just doesn't belong to that person, right? So if you log a call as wrong number, the phone validity will automatically switch to being invalid for you. So you don't have to go and change it. It's going to do it automatically for you. And that's, regardless if you're calling from the dialer or you're logging your calls manually in here. So Sherry is asking why before I call the leads is it shows the status of tried to contact. So Sherry, it does that when you send a text message out. So when you send a text message out to a lead, it essentially you've tried to contact them because you're hoping that they're going to respond. If that lead responds to your text message, the pipeline will automatically move to made contact. Now, if in this case, so in some of them, you'll see the text message may have failed. So the pipeline isn't moving to try to contact at that point because we have not tried to contact. It's going to be on new lead at that point. Now, just because a text message fails doesn't mean you have a bad phone number. So it could be a landline. They could have dropped their service. They could have just dropped or went into a dead zone for a moment there. They could have turned their phone off, but for whatever reason, the text message didn't deliver. So if ever you do see that, you're still going to call that number if it looks like it could potentially be a good phone number, because you never know what the situation may have been. So when in doubt, always call. Don't just deem it as invalid if that text message didn't deliver. So yes, Sherry, this text message is sent by this system because it's like your built-in assistant. It's trying to attempt to gain connections on your behalf. So you're essentially trying to contact that lead. Yes, so yes, that's why it's saying that you still tried to contact, whether you manually sent that or the system sent it or it's part of a campaign or you sent a mass text, as long as it sends and it delivers, it's going to move the pipeline to try to contact because you've essentially tried to contact that lead. So I hope that makes sense to you. Perfect. So now as you're going through, so the one thing that to kind of remember is through your number 1 and number 2, your ultimate goal is to have these empty, 0 leads in both of these filters at the end of any given day. So your number 2 filter, essentially you want to call everyone on that list because it's only going to be that 23 to 25 seconds. You can typically powerhouse through that list in no time at all. You've already kind of verified that you've got a good number, it potentially belongs to that lead, so you're allowed to just swiftly move along that call list. Again, in the first couple of weeks, you guys might be a little bit more call heavy because you're playing catch up. But once you are caught up, your number 1 and number 2 are essentially leads that have registered in the last couple of weeks that we've yet to gain connections with. So it makes it a lot more manageable because there's only going to be a handful of people in both those filters. Now, naturally, as we make contact with them, we've got a filter for that because that's our goal. We want to make contact with them. So I'm going to add a couple others on here. So anyone with a pipeline of made contact, set meetings, signed agreement, or showing. We're not including sold because we don't need them in this list. So essentially anyone that's moved past the tried to contact, we're putting in this list. We're then going to show the ones where they're active. So their last activity is, and then we're using this filter, all leads within the last number of days, and we want anyone that was active in the last 30 days. I'm just going to save that for you. So in this case, I don't know if we have any. We don't have anyone in this filter, but that's okay. So our goal is to get people in here, but as fast as we're getting people in here, we're also trying to get them out of here. And that's going to essentially be your follow-up filter. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create some follow-up filters and show you how that works. Because once we make contact with somebody, we need to put them in an appropriate place on a shelf. So if you guys ever watch Beverly's webinars, she likes to kind of refer to the grocery store where we put everything on the shelf so we know where to find it when we need to look for it. So same idea with your leads, except for we're doing this in a fashion where we're tagging them based on when they plan to move and how often we should be following up with them. So I'm just going to clear this filter so that we have the ability to create some tags here. So the first thing that we're going to do is click on this plus sign. So it's on any lead, you can click that plus sign. We're then into your tag list. Okay, so once you add a tag to the tag list, it's available to any lead. You don't have to keep doing this on every person that you want to create a tag for. So we're going to create your check-in filters. So you're going to have a 1-week check-in. So people that you tag with a 1-week check-in are typically your hot to trot leads. They're planning to transact within the next 3 months. We're going to be checking in on these people weekly. So I'm just going to click and change the color. And I'm just going to copy this so that I can easily create the additional filters. And then I'm going to confirm it. You're going to notice that when you add a tag, it's automatically selected for you. So you can just deselect it if you're not intending on adding it to a lead at that point. And then we're going to go in and we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to do this one as a 2-week check-in. So people who are typically a 2-week check-in, these are still relatively hot to trot leads, but they're planning a move, 3 to 6 months out, essentially. And I always encourage, use your best judgment. You were the one that was on the call with them. Use your best judgment or set the expectation of when you're going to check in on them so that they're aware. You then have your monthly check-in. So monthly check-ins are typically people that are 6 to 12 months out. You would then have your quarterly check-ins. So quarterly check-ins are people that are 12 to 18 months out typically. You follow up with them every 90 days. And then you would have your 6-month check-in. These are people that are a year and a half plus or no intentions really of moving when you reach out to them. So 6-month check-in. So the reason I put the stars here, just so you guys are aware, is that this list, like we just added this feature where you could search for tags essentially, but this tag list is in alphabetical order. So by putting an asterisk, it's always going to show up at the top of your tag list, and they're all going to be grouped together, and you would essentially make them the same color so they're easy to find. So let's pretend I'm just going to put a 1-week check-in on her, and I'm going to put a monthly check-in just to be able to showcase something for you. So we'll take these off after, okay? So now we want to create filters. So now we potentially have a 1-week check-in on Livia. She's hot to trot. We want to keep ourselves top of mind and make sure she's not sitting there with questions, or we're leaving too much room for somebody else to potentially reach out and just be more convenient. So leads will act on convenience first and foremost. We have to build that trust and earn their business ultimately. So to create your check-in filters, and you guys, I am going to be sending you some links afterwards that kind of showcase these in step-by-step to the videos that are kind of primarily focused on this, because this is a lot to take in for sure, and I do get it. I've been using this system for a long time, so I can go through it a little bit faster. So the first thing that you're going to want to do, and this is going to be relatively easy once you do the first one. So this one here, we're simply going to now filter our leads by tag, because we want to be able to filter these people by the tag that they have. So we have so we're going to move this one to any selected tags, and then we're going to choose the 1 week check-in. We're then going to add a filter item, which is the was not contacted. And in the middle option, we're going to go phone and SMS. So this way, on somebody that is a weekly check-in, you can alternate between calling them and texting them for their check-ins. And yes, you can leave a voice message on somebody that you've already talked to, because again, we're just letting them know we're there to help when they're ready. And then this one here, we're going to do all leads. So was not contacted by phone or SMS, and it's all leads in the last number of days, and we're going 7. Okay, so this one here, again, we do an asterisk, and this is your 1 week check-ins. And then I'm going to create this as a company filter. So now when we pull down this list, you can see that it's in this list here. Okay, now, why did that one not show up in this list? Did we contact them? Oh, because they got the text message. That's why they're not in this list. So now that we've got this one, it's going to be easier for you to create the other ones, because now all I have to do is change this to a 2, remove this tag, put this tag on, and then change this to 14, and then click create company again. And then now I'm going to do this for the monthly. So monthly check-ins, change this from 6 weeks to monthly, and then that's 30 days. Now for monthly check-ins, I suggest taking the SMS one off, because we want to be calling them. And then same for the quarterly and the 6 month. We should probably be reaching out to them by phone at that point. So let's just do the quarterly. So that'll be 90 days. And then we'll have your 6 month. So the 6 month, you're going to add an additional asterisk, and I'll tell you why in a second. So it's your 6 month check-ins, and is 180 days. Let me create that. So the reason why we're putting a double asterisk here is that just like the tag list, this list is also in alphabetical order. Okay, so by putting the number sign in front of these ones, they're grouped in an order. And by putting the asterisks in here, if I didn't have a double asterisk on the 6 month one, it would actually pop right below the 2 week check-in. So in order to keep it in order of, what's the word I'm looking for? The nearest check-in to the furthest apart check-in, that's how you would do it. It's kind of going through that. So now I'm going to actually find another lead to throw these tags on, so that you guys can actually see what I was doing when it comes to that. So let's just go to an older lead that I know you haven't texted. So Maria Donata, and I'm going to throw the weekly and the monthly on, just so that we can use some things. So now, because she's got this check-in tag on her, if I go to the 1 week check-in tag, we're going to notice that she's in this list. Okay. Now, similar to your number 2 filter, the minute you call Mary Donata and or text her, she will fall off of this list and automatically reappear again in 7 days for you to do the exact same thing. So it's automatically going to cycle through these leads for you. Now, why I threw the monthly on is to show you, just in case a certain situation happens. So because I have both these tags, she's showing in this monthly check-in as well. So let's say you have a lead and you've deemed them a monthly check, and I'm going to follow up with them every month just to see how they're doing, or every quarter just to see how they're doing. So let's say you call Mary Donata. Mary Donata doesn't answer. You just leave a voice message and perhaps follow up with a text message right after. Hey, just I've left you a message, just checking in, making sure everything's good on your end, so on and so forth. Just to kind of piggyback that. Now, because if we log that information, this lead is going to fall off this list for 30 days. Right? She's going to be out of mind, out of sight, out of mind. So if we want to try to keep contacting her, that's where we would put the weekly check-in tag on her in addition to that monthly. So you would only add the second tag if you did a check-in and didn't get an answer. So then that way she's going to keep popping up in your weekly check-in for you to check in on until you get a response from her, whether you end up talking to this person or they respond to your text message. And then in that case, you could remove the weekly check-in because you've now actually gained a connection with them. And you may need to move your check-ins around, your tags. So once you guys start using the tags, it starts to come together. It becomes a habit more than anything. That, okay, I talked to them, I got to put a tag on them. Oh, I just did my check-in. It was a quarterly check-in. But now we're that much closer. I'm going to take that quarterly check-in off, and I am going to put a monthly check-in on because I should probably now follow up with this person every month rather than every 90 days. Now, for some of you, that could be overwhelming. 100% acknowledge that. So what you can also do is, in a case where, let's say you had a monthly check-in on somebody, is to also piggyback that check-in with a task. So let's say you put the monthly and you didn't call, so you put a task in here for 7 days from now for you to call and follow up with Mary Donata for her monthly check-in. So the benefit of doing this is that you can push the task. So let's say the task pops up. Again, you got to remember to check your tasks daily in order for this to work for you. But you can push that task. So once you have a task, let's say it's in progress, if you call her, she doesn't answer, you can push that task for another 3 days, 7 days, 10 days, however many days you want. You can also sync your task or sync your system with Google. So up in the top right-hand corner here, if you guys are Gmail or G Suite users, there's an integrations tab where you can connect your Google Calendar. By doing that, if you create a task on any lead, that task is going to show up in your Google Calendar at the specified day and time that you created that task for. And the task will also include a link to the lead. So if you're not at your desk, you can still open up the lead on your phone and still reach out to them to carry through on your check-in or whatever task it may be. If you don't have a Google Calendar, you have your task notifications up here where there's a calendar right there. You can also, on the left-hand side here, you have a task. This pulls up and allows you to filter through all of your tasks, whether they're overdue, upcoming, that sort of thing. So you can really filter through and search that there. Sherry is asking if she can change the color of a tag afterwards. Yes, you can definitely. So if we open up this tag list, you have the ability to edit. So you can go in, edit it, and then change the color if you wish to, and then just go confirm afterwards. So I want to change this one to blue. You just hit confirm. Now that one is blue. I'm going to move it back just so that his tags are consistent. So do those check-in filters make sense to everyone? I know it can be very overwhelming. And I find that once you start doing it, it really starts to make sense. A lot more sense anyway. I find it's like driving a car, right? If we're the passenger, we forget how we got there or how to get home, right? But if we're driving the car, we have no problem. We turn left, we turn right, we do whatever. So it's the same kind of thing in here where you're not in the driver's seat right now. So it is a little bit different or harder to follow, I find, and I can totally understand that. So now that we've got all these filters created in here, what we want to do is in this made contact, we would essentially want to remove anyone off of this list that has a check-in tag on them because they already have their own category, right? We already know who they are and when we need to follow up with them. So we're going to add one to here, which is for tag. And we want to have does not have any selected tags. And we don't want anyone in this list that has a check-in tag on them. Okay, so then we would update that. So inevitably, what this is doing is basically shortening your made contact list to only show you people that you've essentially made contact with, but you've yet to gather enough information about a timeline to know how often you should be checking in on them. So maybe they just responded to a text message, you haven't even had a conversation with them. Or maybe you had a conversation with them a long time ago and didn't think to get the timeline. So now we're going to be calling them and trying to get them off this list. So again, you're trying to get people off of this list and put them in their appropriate follow-up filter. Now, again, when it comes to timelines, that is one of the most important pieces of the puzzle when you are talking to your leads. It's also one of the most commonly missed portions of the call. So if I look at someone's notes, I'll see someone that creates great call notes and I'll look, I was like, this is great, but when are they moving? Well, I didn't think to ask that. So, well, that's very, very important to know when somebody plans on actioning their criteria. So for any of you that have never had a session with me, I always call it's the when, the why, the what, and the where of like importance information. So when do they plan on actioning their criteria? This is going to identify for you how often you should be following up with them, and also prevent you from selling them when they're not in a position to be sold to yet, right? No one wants to be sold to or feel pressured into something they're not ready for. And so if we don't know their timeline, we are inevitably doing that unintentionally, right? Because we're trying to maybe push them to say, hey, you want to go look at houses this weekend? Is there anything you've seen that I can get you? We're kind of pushing them as if we're trying to convert them to move right now or, start looking right now. So always understanding when they plan on moving. Then their why. Why are they moving? What's their situation? What has to happen for this move to be possible for that lead? That's going to identify to you how you can help them. What information, what kind of solutions can you offer to help align them to get from A to B? And then the what and the where is essentially the criteria, right? It's the easiest component of information to grab from a lead. It's the most comfortable as well. It's also the least of your concern when it comes to converting somebody. It does help, obviously. You want to be sending them proper listings, but it's not going to help you convert them at the end of the day. So in that order, so always leaving great notes for yourself in your system. So I always encourage leaving notes as if somebody else is going to do your follow-up for you. Okay, we all do it, including myself. I've done it. I'm guilty. I am raising my hand of leaving short notes for ourselves, and with the conception that we're going to remember what we meant, right? But reality is you're not going to remember. You're going to look at that note and be like, what the heck was I even thinking? Like, I don't even know what this means. So the more thorough your notes and the more information you're gathering from your lead, the more powerful your follow-ups are going to be, because you're going to be able to use that past information and tidbits of that past conversation when you're following up with someone. And that impresses a lot of people that you actually remembered that information. You're not just another number, you're an actual real person, and I care, and I'm building a relationship with you. So you're ultimately acting in a way where you're trying to earn their business. So keeping in mind that a lot of your leads are 6 to 24 months from turning back, right? So we have optimal time to be able to earn their business. And you can even ask your lead that as well. It's like, hey, Livia, I understand that you're not planning a move for probably another 9 months. You're looking next fall here. Is there anything I could be doing right now to help you in order to earn your business for when that time comes? Like any information, any resources, anything I can be doing for you at all. Some people will be caught off guard and actually impressed that you're even offering to help them, right? So the more the lead understands that you're actually here to help them and you're not trying to sell them anything, they're going to be a lot more receptive to you. And essentially at the end of the day, you're just building relationships. You're establishing relationships with these people. So do just focus on having great conversations. Like you're at a cocktail party, you're just mingling with all these people, making new friends. Your friends just happen to be leads that are potentially looking to buy a house. So any conversation you do have, try to find an opportunity to talk about something outside of real estate. If you can do that, not only will you potentially find something mutually in common, which is super powerful, but the minute you give the lead the opportunity to take control of the conversation, because they're talking about their dog, for example, and what kind of dog and this and that, and you can engage, their walls are dropped instantly. Instant wall drops. They're now talking. They're in control. They love what they're talking about. You're engaged with that, and you're in good position as well. And you're going to document that. They have a dog. The name's Lola. It barks a lot. So whatever it is, you can put it, and then you can reference that in a future call. So in your leads, obviously, when we're logging our calls, we're putting our notes in on those calls. The important notes I suggest putting right here. Okay, so things that you are going to reference each time you're probably reaching out to Olivia, because all your notes and calls and everything, it's going to, this list here, this is a short one, but the longer a lead is in your system and the more you're attempting to engage with them or are engaging with them, all those notes start to get pushed down. And you don't want to have to go dig for that information when you're going to reach out to that person. So anything important, put in the lead description. And I always encourage just putting a note as the date as well. So kind of like December 2nd, 21, and then your note. That way you know when you actually talked about that, right? So I know, last time we spoke in December, you had mentioned that, blah, 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 whatever it was, right? So it's also kind of like how you call any of your service providers, your phone providers, Rogers, Bell, whoever. Doesn't matter who you talk to, they all know every past call that you've had and what you encounter and any issues or whatever it was, because they've got strategy and a procedure where they're all documenting things in a structure, because they know that they're probably not going to be the same person that talks to that person at the end of the day. You are a number with Rogers or any of those companies. Perfect. So that's really, really it for the tags and the filters and all of that. Does anyone have any questions? You guys are a quiet group. You're just taking it all in. I guess. Any questions that I could answer for you with respect to that at all, or in general? Everyone seems okay. No questions. No questions. Wow. So next week, what are we even talking about next week? I don't even know what we're talking about next week. I forget. Templates. Oh, okay. So next week we are going to be jumping into templates. So really how to create templates. If you guys aren't doing the templates, make your life easier. You can just select and send, you do mass actions, include them in your campaigns and so on and so forth. And yeah, that's really what we're talking about. And then, so what I encourage all of you guys to do, so not next week, but the week after that, or the session after, I don't know if I think it's the week after that. We are going to go a refresh, kind of recap through these filters. So it's more of an open session. So for discussion, if somebody had any problems or issues or things like that. But I do encourage that all of you guys attempt to build these filters. Once you have an understanding on how to do something, it's only going to help you, right? So you're going to be able to create more filters. That's also why I said, play around with these filters at all, just see what they do, because you can create very specific audiences for yourself. There's tons of them, right? So being able to do that, if you get caught up and you get stuck creating a filter of any sort, just reach out to support. They're going to they'll send it over to me, and I'll jump in and see kind of where it went wrong, and or you may have a trainer, and I'll set you up with one of your assigned trainer, get them to jump into your system with you and kind of navigate perhaps what went wrong. A lot of times it's just something very minor, but it makes a big difference because there's just the way it was put in there. But yeah, so I do 100% encourage that you do this, because again, in a couple of weeks, we're going to evaluate. If we have more guinea pigs, we can kind of jump in through and see what other people have done and how it's really working for you. And I find that those who do this, I've jumped in a lot of systems where there's lots of leads, it all of a sudden just makes them feel that much more organized and confident, because if everything's just in here and you're going through pages, it's very overwhelming, and you can open it up and close it. It's kind of like, I always call it, it's kind of like that closet or that drawer. We all have one or two, right, in the house where we open it and we know that we need to do something about it, but it is just a big job. So we close that right back up and we keep avoiding it because we just don't want to deal with it. So where, if we took that project and actually broke it down into smaller components, it's going to be a lot more manageable for us, right? It's not so overwhelming at that time. So the same idea with your leads. It's just breaking them down into different components, and then it becomes a lot more manageable. You kind of say, this is my priority today. I only have, 10 minutes to be in my system. I am on the road all day and all evening, 10 minutes today. At least I can pull up a list and hammer through those calls. So if that is the case for you, your weekly check-ins are probably your priority at that point. So your 1 week and 2 week, if you have very little time, you want to make sure that you're staying top of mind with those people at the very least. That's really it for today. You all have yourself a fantastic rest of your evening. I know it's 8 o'clock there for you guys in Ontario anyway. It's only 5 o'clock here in BC and probably 6 o'clock in Alberta if anyone's in Alberta here. So we're all different time zones, which is really great. But yeah, any questions, reach out to support. If you have my contact, you can reach me directly. And then we will get you all in good shape. But thanks all for watching, and we'll see you next week.
So will you leave my filters that you created?
Yeah, this is all here. This is your system. It's all going to be in here. So I'm not deleting anything. So you don't have to create your filters. They're all created. What I need you to do is log your calls. Ultimately is log your calls, go in there. Some of you may actually have a made contact list in there. You're going to go through that list and go through your notes, see if you can throw tags on them and start organizing your database. And you'll feel a lot more accomplished when you do that as well. Again, just reach out to support. They'll assign me if you guys need any. Often I'll jump in and I can create a quick video based on your system as well as to what you need to be doing on your part, and a little bit bite-sized pieces for you.
And sorry, one last question. How do I, start calling people using the system? Like, what do I have?
We got to get your Twilio stuff. So I am going to, I'll send that to you right now. Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining and that participated today. We will see you again next week. Bye now.